Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. Went through, but to transition it back to college football and to transition it back to what I wanted to talk about, this player opt-in thing is just fascinating to me, okay? And so to backtrack, okay, for people who aren't totally sure what is a player opt-in, what is a player opt-out, let me explain. Obviously, you all remember back in whatever it was, late July, early August, we start getting word that the Big Ten, oh my goodness, they're not going to play the season. Gone over it and over it. They were idiots. They probably shouldn't have done it in the first place. They did it for all the wrong reasons. Anyway, you kind of heard AT's spiel on all of that. Obviously, as that was going on, a lot of the best players in the Big Ten decided to opt out of the season. In other words, they just said, look, we're talented enough to go pro. We're not going to sit around and wait to figure out if you want to play this season. And so many of the best players in the Big Ten, even before they made their announcement, just said, you know what, we're out. We're not sitting around. So that's a group that would include Rashad Bateman from Minnesota, would include Rondale Moore from Purdue, and a few other guys. Later on, when the season was officially canceled, a couple more guys opted out as well. Shaun Wade, a star defensive back from Ohio State. Wyatt Davis, a star offensive tackle from Ohio State. All these guys decided to opt out of the season because at the time, there was no season, okay? And so I bring all this up because I find it very interesting that over the last couple weeks, as we have gotten clarity on this college football season, a funny thing's happened. All these guys are opting back in. I mentioned Rondale Moore a minute ago. Purdue star, he has opted back into the season. Rashad Bateman, star wide receiver at Minnesota, has opted back into the season. Shaun Wade, Ohio State, opted back into the season. Wyatt Davis, the offensive tackle at Ohio State, opted back into the season. Jalen Mayfield from Michigan opted back into the season. Now the Pac-12 guys are starting to make those decisions as well. Earlier this week, Diamador Lenore, a star cornerback for Oregon, opted back into the season. And on Wednesday, the reason I'm talking about this, Elijah Vera Tucker, a potential first-round draft pick out of USC offensive tackle, decided to opt back into the season. Now you're probably sitting there thinking, AT, I love you. I love that DJ voice that you did at the beginning of the show. It was kind of weird, but I was into it. It's Thursday, whatever, who cares? But you're probably thinking, like, why are you talking about an offensive tackle from USC? I'm a Tennessee fan. I'm a Georgia fan. I'm a USC fan, and I don't even care about this offensive tackle at USC. And the reason I'm bringing this up is not to talk about individually this player, Elijah Vera Tucker, the impact that he is going to have on college football, or for that matter, Rondale Moore, Shaun Wade, Wyatt Davis, whatever. The reason I am bringing it up is because I believe that all of these guys opting back into the season has officially squashed the single dumbest narrative in all of college sports, and maybe, frankly, all of sports in general. And that is very simply this. It is the narrative that college athletes, these poor souls, they're being exploited. Their life is so tough, it's awful, feel terrible for these Michigan and Ohio State and Alabama football players. And if you've listened to this show, you kind of already know where I stand on all this stuff. But to backtrack for people who do not know, I grew up in Connecticut, grew up around college sports. Obviously, it was funny. I was doing an interview with a listener of this podcast not long ago, and I was talking about my childhood. And I was talking about the fact that me growing up in Connecticut in the 1990s, surrounded by UConn men's basketball, by UConn women's basketball, being in Connecticut when UConn football went from 1AA to 1A, in other words, FCS to FBS, that shaped who I am. And obviously, look, I am passionate about college sports. I love college sports. It's probably 80% of what we do on this show. For people who are new, we will talk a ton of college basketball as we get to November, December, January, February. But I bring all of this up because I have always said that I believe that in many ways college sports gets a bad rap, right? Like, I don't think it's a perfect system. I don't think it's a utopian system. Nothing in the world is perfect. But I do believe that it gets a totally raw deal and a totally bad rap. And the reason I believe that is very simply this. It's because it's a system that, while imperfect, benefits the vast, vast, vast majority of the student athletes that are on any of these given campuses. And I think most of you know that. Maybe all of you know that for all I know. I don't think you would listen to this show if you didn't like college sports. But the bottom line is, if you follow college sports closely, if you really understand what college sports is about, you understand that most of these guys and girls have it really good, right? Like, we spend so much time talking about the Trevor Lawrences and the Johnny Manziels and the Reggie Bushes, the few guys that actually do move the needle in college sports, that we forget to, we don't talk about the guys and girls that benefit from that system. And does it suck for Trevor Lawrence? Yeah, but guess what? It's no different in the NBA, where there is a salary cap. LeBron James probably deserves to make more money than he does. Anthony Davis probably deserves to make more money than he does. Now, I know I'm comparing a paid athlete to an unpaid athlete, but the point that I'm trying to bring up is that, one, while college athletes do not get paid, it's a great system, right? And it's a system that I've talked about many times. You get your school taken care of. You get your food taken care of. You get your housing taken care of. You get your medical bills taken care of. So essentially what I would ask is this, is if your housing, your school, your medical bills are all taken care of, how much money do you really need? And it's worth noting, again, that college athletes do get they get paid money every semester. It's called a cost of attendance scholarship. And it should be worth noting as well, I am not opposed to name, image, and likeness coming in. So in other words, if the car dealership wants to pay Trevor Lawrence $30,000, $25,000, whatever, to do a car commercial, I have no problem with it. I've talked about it on this show on and on and on and on and on. But the point I'm trying to get to is we spend so much time focused on Trevor Lawrence, so much time focused on Justin Fields, so much time focused on Zion or Cade Cunningham or whoever the next basketball star is, that we forget to realize that all the benefits that they have, that backup offensive tackle has, and that women's volleyball player has, and that women's tennis player does, and the men's baseball player has as well. And so I bring all this up because it drives me insane when you see the big talking head national media guys, and I know I'm by technicality a national media guy, and I don't know if I'm a big talking head or a medium-sized talking head or whatever, and this conversation is getting weird, so I'm going to steer it the other way. But the point I'm trying to make is, you see these people talking, and they're just talking out of their you-know-what, saying, these kids are so exploited, the system is so terrible. Go to these college campuses for 10 minutes. These kids have it great. Trevor Lawrence has it great. Could he be making more money if he was a professional? Of course. Does Clemson football make a lot of money for the university? Of course. But if Trevor Lawrence was paid everything that he deserved, we probably couldn't have the women's tennis team, the women's golf team, whatever. And maybe you don't care. Whatever. The point is, most college athletes have it way better than people realize. You see these people in the media, these kids have it so bad, their life is so terrible. And so I want to take that conversation and circle it back to the player opt-ins of the last couple weeks, because I think this is a huge narrative that is somewhat being brushed under the rug, relatively speaking. Because we see one guy, we see another guy, we don't really think about it. But what we're starting to see is think about the guys that have opted back in. Now, it's worth noting, I want to make it abundantly clear, not all the star players have opted back in. Micah Parsons from Penn State is still just basically training with an agent, staying low-key, all that stuff. He could have come back to Penn State. Miami's best defensive player, ironically, we'll talk about Miami in a minute, he opted out, he's not coming back. So it's not as though every single player that could have come back is, but when you look at the guys that are coming back, it's a pretty good indictment that the college sports system isn't that bad. Think about it. Rondale Moore, if he never played another down of college football, would be a first-round pick. That's indisputable. It's undebatable unless, God forbid, there was an injury while he was training, or God forbid he does something dumb and gets himself in trouble with the law. Rondale Moore was going to be a first-round pick whether he came back to Purdue or not. Same for Rashad Bateman, the wide receiver at Minnesota. People are saying he's the second best wide receiver in this draft behind Jamar Chase at LSU. If he never played college football again, he's still going to be a millionaire in 8 months. Same with Shaun Wade, the defensive back from Ohio State. Same with Wyatt Davis, the offensive tackle at Ohio State. And so what all of these opt-ins, first of all, just great for college football, right? When all these guys for Ohio State come back and are playing, that's going to be great for the sport of college football. Same with the guys at USC, same with the guys at Oregon, same with the guys at Michigan, same with the guys at Minnesota, on and on and on and on and on. But beyond that, doesn't it kind of prove the point that these kids aren't being exploited? I mean, think about it. Again, Rondale Moore never has to step on a college football field again. Rashad Bateman never has to step on a college football field again. Shaun Wade, Wyatt Davis, on and on and on. Instead, when everybody opted out and they tried to claim, oh, look at them, they don't need college football. So blah, blah, blah. Well, as it turns out, they opted out because the Big Ten was a mess, and the Big Ten didn't know what was going on, and the Pac-12 was a mess, and the Pac-12 didn't know what was going on. And I would add, on top of all these Big Ten and Pac-12 players that are opting back in, how about Alabama? Alabama hasn't had a single player opt out that I know of. Clemson has not had a single player opt out that I know of. Georgia, outside of Jamie Newman, who we're not even sure if he was going to win the starting quarterback job, has not had a single player opt out. The reason? Because those teams are really good, and they have a chance to compete for a national championship. And when you add them in with the Big Ten guys, I think to me this is abundantly clear and maybe an underrated story in terms of conversations that need to be happening right now, and that's this. I think the conversation about these poor, exploited college athletes, I think it's basically dead. Yes, when they're juniors, they're going to go get their money. Yes, when college basketball players can leave after a year, the ones that can make money are going to go. But the guys that are on campus, life ain't bad. And Rashad Bateman's proved that. Rondale Moore's proved that. Shaun Wade's proved that. Wyatt Davis has proved that. Elijah Vera Tucker has proved that. More importantly, they have proved something that I've been saying for a while. Not only is the college life good, but being a college football player is fun, man. Like, being in the locker room's fun. Being with your guys is fun. Playing ball is fun. And this is what drives me crazy about these media that cover this as a professional. Like, I'm not saying there aren't a lot of insanely professional elements to college sports. But at the end of the day, it is not a business in the way that the NFL or NBA is. Is it a business? Of course. Not in the way the NBA or NFL is. And so it drives me crazy, and it makes me laugh that no one's talking about this now. The fact that these kids do love playing ball. The fact they do love being with their teammates. They do love being in a locker room with their guys. And that they could have opted out and be making money right now with an agent, and instead have decided to come back and play college football. I think it's good for the kids. I think it's good for the sport. And I think it's good for that dumb narrative that being a college basketball or football player, or really any college athlete, is so tough. All right, now that I got myself all fired up,